Hey guys, so today I'm going to take you on a little walk. I'm not going to do any metal detecting today, but I wanted to show you some subtle signs, some indicators of what to look for when looking for old-time diggings from the old-timers, which will often lead you to alluvial gold that hasn't been washed down the hills into the river systems and creeks. And as you can see behind me, we have what looks to be a creek, but upon further exploration, I will show you that it is not an actual occurring creek. It's got water in it now because of rains we've had recently. And right up the way here, I'm going to show you another indicator of what to look for when looking for old-time diggings and pocket gold. And this pocket gold that we're looking for is coming from a source, and generally coming from a contact zone, whether it be quartz and the country rock in the area, or possibly the bedrock coming out of the ground contacting clay seams where the gold travels. So let me show you just right over here another indicator that this is an old-time digger site. So upon further inspection, one of the things we're looking for is, if you look up on the hill here, you can see that it's got areas void of plant life, and it's very rocky, and it's hard to tell right now because we just got rains, but generally that area up there has a residue of a white powdery substance. Now I don't know if that's leaching out of the rocks or if it's just sediment left over from the mining days. But if you look at the bedrock here, in this little runoff area, this rock here, and there's a good example right here. This bedrock here is greenstone. And this greenstone is another good indicator of an area where there could be pocket gold, because this greenstone is a very hard, heavy rock. Here's another good example of this greenstone. So now let me show you a real clear indicator that this is an old digging site. Okay, so if we look up this little wash here, the little creek we just looked at is right behind me, about 30 yards. And this is to the left of it. And this is a clear indicator that the old timers were here looking for gold. And what I believe what this was a ground sluice. Now in some of these areas, what the old timers would do is they would cut down cedar trees, and cedar is a very hard, resistant, resilient wood, and they would they'd take the logs and they'd bury them in part way into the ground here, and when the floods would happen, those cedar logs would act like riffles, and they would trap the gold, and they'd leave them there in the winter, probably shoveling in material in them, and then in the summer they would clear all that material out, take it to a water source and pan it out. And if you look here, you see these little wash areas that look like wash areas, these cuts in this decomposing bedrock. That's another good indicator, and that's a good indicator to know that something happened here above this site at the top of the hill. And when you see this, there's some areas more subtle than others, but when you see this, you should investigate to see what was going on at the top of the hill. And so if you notice This material here, this is all shale. It's decomposing shale. And if you grab some of it, you can see there's clay mixed in with the shale. The clay is what will hold the gold. And that's what the old timers were here looking for. The other area we're at was greenstone. So what's that tell you? It tells you this is a contact zone, and that it's very possible gold formed here. The fact that we have this ground sluice here, and we have two different type bedrocks close together, tells me exactly that the old timers here were finding gold. And if you look right up this area here, you can see on the sides here where they dug out where they were following the clay seam. Up this little area here, and shoveling the material into this little sluice, this ground sluice area where they were running water down. And if we look at the wash here, and then we look right over here, there's something else going on here. So let's take a walk over and take a look and see what that is. So here's that little area, and you can see this is a ditch that they dug to move water. And so they were moving a lot of water in this area. So here's a view of the uphill side of this little ditch that they dug. So let's go ahead and head up the hill and see exactly what they were doing up top. Okay, so I made it to the top of the hill, and when I got here, I realized something very important, that I'm extremely out of shape. But even more important than that, is that this is a ground sluice operation. And what the old timers would do was they'd build an area called a penstock to hold water. They'd fill it at night, and then in the morning they'd open it up to run water down to work the areas. And they'd move these, sometimes they would move these water from faraway mountains, and they'd have to dig ditches, and a lot of effort got put in here. But you can see this bank here. This is a little levee that they built, and it has eroded over time because this is done 100 years ago. But you can see the bank here. But if you look right here, this is where they're moving a huge volume of water. And this leads down, we'll go over there in a minute, but this leads down to that first little wash area, or the little creek where we found the greenstone bedrock. So let's go ahead and walk around a little bit and just see if we can't see anything else. Another thing to point out is, but you can tell it's extremely red from the iron oxide. And if you look here, this area is full of ironstone. And if you look here, there's another area where they sent water down. Let me show you this. This is interesting. Okay, because many of these areas here were originally mined for gold. When World War II hit, the gold mines were closed down, and any mines that had copper in them, they were ordered by law to mine for copper for the war effort. because they needed copper for bullets and artillery and things. And this little creek here has a rich copper deposit. I have a friend that detected down here. There's a little bluff and a cliff, and he went at the base of that cliff and was detecting, and he actually found a raw copper nugget. But the rocks are stained a turquoise color from all the copper leaching out of the ground. So let me show you an example of that real quick. So yeah, that's very interesting. So if you see that, you know there's copper leaching out of the ground into the little stream here. And the other thing you need to keep in mind, a safety concern, is that many of these areas were extremely toxic. They sank shafts. There's a rather large mine up on the hill here where the old timers went quite deep into the mountain. And when they abandoned it, it caused a bunch of the arsenopyrites and the other heavy minerals to leach out of the rocks into the nearby water systems, creating a very bad environmental situation. Matter of fact, not too far from here is a lake where the government came and contained the runoff so the heavy metals would drop out. And there's a picture of a shovel that got left in the ground for, I don't know, I don't remember if it was a day or two. I'll put it here with the picture. But the worker came back, pulled the shovel out, and the shovel was actually eroded off from all the heavy minerals attacking the iron. So you have to be careful in areas like this. The dust around here is probably not the best thing to be breathing. So let's go take a look on the other end down here. So now we're at the top of that first little runoff area I showed you with the greenstone bedrock. And you can see that they moved a lot of water through here because it cut the bank so much. And you can see how it goes down, and then eventually it would have made it to the river down there. So the mining of this area was back in the 1800s, and they also did some in the 20s and 30s. But also there are indications of people being here in the 60s and 70s. Because there's an old VW bus. Anybody want to restore an old classic? Leave a comment. I think the thing's been there a while. The axles are gone here, and looks like it's been stripped and it's kind of falling apart. And actually down in the river there you can see some of the old timbers, probably from the little gate they had to contain the water. And there again, that most likely would have been made out of cedar, since it's still visible today and hasn't rotted away. And so if we look over to the left here, that's where the mouth of that first little creek is, right through here. And we look up the hill, you can see where they're bringing the water in. And that little cut right here, filling this penstock area. Alright guys, well, those are the indicators you want to look for when looking for areas worked by the old timer. Some of them can be very obvious, some of them can be more subtle, especially if it's a smaller operation. Maybe just a couple miners were working the area. It's not going to be so obvious as this one here I've showed you today. This was a huge operation. Leave a comment, let me know if you have things like this in your area where the old timers dug and found gold. Until then, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.